1,300 years ago, this was a unique city in the world, surrounded by high city walls. Today, it still looks the same. Behind the walls, audiences from around the world are being entertained by a big performance. A dance is going on there, telling people how imperial life was like in the 7th century. Dancers are wearing clothes that look like the rosy clouds in the sky and are as light as feathers. The ringing pearls and beads, their beautiful hairstyles, and their headwear with jewelries make their body extremely charming. Watching the magnificent clothes and dances and listening to the gentle music, people feel that they are living in a dynasty hundreds of years ago. The costume is a symbol of a nation's culture and reflects the customs and culture of an era. In ancient China, the costume could tell a person's social and political status. The Chinese emperor, also called Son of the Heaven, was believed to represent the order of the heaven. The crown is a symbol of such power. The front part of a crown is round, while the rear is square, as ancient Chinese believed the heaven was round and the earth was square. The top of the crown is dark blue, and the bottom part is yellow, meaning the heaven is blue and the earth is yellow. At the front, there are some pearls stringed by colorful silk, indicating the rotation of days and nights. There are also some decorations made of silk and cotton near the ears, as a reminder for the emperor not to believe any slanderous talk. When the emperor is wearing the crown, the front should be lower than the rear to show the emperor's care for the people. At the same time, the Chinese emperor's gown is also a symbol of dignity and power. The style of the gown is pretty simple, but there are a dozen pictures on it. The 12 pictures came into being in 600 BC and had to be used for more than 2,400 years until the last Chinese emperor, Puyi, who abdicated in 1911. Nearly all the colors employed by Chinese imperial costumes are the favorite colors of the Chinese people. The colors of the costume functions in two ways. First, they distinguish people of different social status. Second, they tell the occasions. In the past, there were strict regulations about what color people could use. The principle was that the higher the social status a person enjoyed, the more color he could use. So people of upper classes were admired and imitated by ordinary people, and the color of their clothes also had great impact on ordinary people's dressing. Ancient Chinese believed the world consisted of gold, wood, water, fire, and earth. Thus came a theory of yin and yang, the two opposing principles in nature, the former feminine and negative, the latter masculine and positive. The theory decided the color of ancient Chinese costume. Earth is yellow, representing the center. Wood is dark blue, symbolizing the east. Fire is red, standing for the south. Gold is white, symbolizing the west. And finally, water is black, meaning the north. The 5 colors were regarded as the orthodox colors. among which yellow was the most precious and was adopted by the emperor's clothes. But later, the Son of Heaven was regarded as the symbol of unity and was asked to wear different colors in different seasons. Dark blue in spring, red in summer, yellow at the beginning of autumn, white in deep autumn, and black in winter. From then on, the 5 orthodox colors have become the traditional bottom color of Chinese fashion. Of all the imperial costumes of China's empires, those in the Tang dynasty in the 7th century were the most magnificent and gorgeous. The emperor and the queens were luxurious, and those of other people living in the imperial court were bright and colorful. The Tang dynasty was the strongest and most prosperous feudal empire, with rich culture. The country was loosely governed and was open to foreign nations. From the style of the costume, we can see the beauty of confidence. Men of upper classes usually wear gowns. Officials would wear kerchiefs, while ordinary people wear shirts. Women's clothes in the Tang dynasty were the most sexy and exposed. This can be seen in a picture from that period, which describes a maid putting a flower in her hair. The woman in the picture wears very thin silk ribbons, without any underwear, and exposing her chest. Such sexy dresses can only be seen in the Tang dynasty costume. People at that time believed that beautiful women should be plump with a hair bun and a long skirt and flying silk. The most popular dress for a woman was a short skirt combined with a long skirt. The skirt was tied very high, sometimes up to the chest. Another kind of popular skirt was from the imperial court. The skirt can only reach the waist with pretty short sleeves. The chest is covered by some silk ribbons. Because of the wide neckline, the upper part of the chest is uncovered. The collar also had various styles. There are round collars, square collar, slope collar, direct collar, and even heart-like collars. The boldest one is called open collar, which makes women's chest more beautiful and sexy. There was a poem to describe it, which reads, "There is always white snow on the chest." Most of the clothes in the Tang dynasty were made of silk. Colorful brocades were often used to decorate sleeves and collars. Pictures including chickens, fighting goats, phoenix, and flying dragons were on the surface material. Many clothes also had embroideries made of color threads or golden threads. This scarf is made of silk, painted with gold and silver powder. With one end clipped, with the clothes on the chest, the scarf hung on the shoulder and went around the arms. It looked very light and elegant. In Chang'an, the capital then, many people preferred to wear foreign clothes. They imported clothes from some Western ethnic groups. At that time, foreigners' clothes were called hu. Their clothes usually featured turned-down collars, tight sleeves, a long robe, feather belts, and metal ornaments. Under all these were trousers. A woman dressed in this way would look heroic, particularly with upshooting eyebrows and hairstyle. The Song dynasty from the 10th century to the 13th century was another comparatively strong empire after the Tang dynasty. Like the Tang dynasty, the rulers also strictly separated clothes of different classes. Government officials' clothes were in the colors of purple, rose, green and dark blue. Senior officers could wear purple clothes. Middle-ranking officers could wear rose clothes, while low-ranking officers could only wear green clothes. Yellow was for the emperor only. The costume originated from the Tang dynasty, and the only difference is that officials in the Song dynasty began to wear a black gauze cap, which had two long iron wings. There were rows of chicken patterns on the clothes of queens and empresses. They wear phoenix coronet, which was as heavy as 1 kilogram or even more. The phoenix coronet was made of gold, silver and jewelries. The number of jewelries on it decides the rank of people who wear it. There were 24 flowers on the queen's coronet, while the empresses only got 18. Women in the Song dynasty liked to use hairpins and scarves, which they believed were key to making themselves beautiful and also reflected the development of fashion at that time. When a woman walked, the flower or bird-like hairpins would sway, bringing much charm to women. Women in the Song dynasty enjoyed much less freedom than people of the Tang dynasty, and their taste of beauty was also different. People didn't like plump women anymore. Instead, they preferred simplicity and elegance. Tight-sleeved jackets and long gowns with laces were typical women's dressing. Maids in the imperial family wore such clothes and didn't have hairpins. Unlike women in the Tang dynasty who were lavish, they looked fresh and elegant. Women in such simple a costume looked slim. Silk and yarn skirts were most popular, while red was the favorite color. Usually there would be some folds. The higher social status a woman enjoyed, the more folds the woman would have on her skirt. Every emperor in the Song dynasty forbade extravagant clothes. Restrictions on women's clothes were severe. The habit of exposing one's chest and back was totally banned. Women's ornaments were even thrown into fire to warn women not to wear such things. At the same time, women were not allowed to make their hair into buns. At the end of the 13th century, Mongols from the north of China became the rulers of China and established the Yuan dynasty. Their costume also reflected the characteristics of Mongolian people. Most of the clothes were made of feather, mainly in red, yellow, green, gold and purple. In the Yuan dynasty, the society was divided into several classes, and there were strict regulations on who should wear what kind of clothes. According to some records, the emperor issued an order on pictures drawn on silk. For example, it was illegal to draw claws on a dragon. Nobles' clothes were a combination of Mongolian and Han styles. The gowns would have cross collar and could reach below the knees. They would also wear very wide waistbands and a large bamboo hat. Besides, they adopted part of the Tang and Song dynasties, such as the emperor's big crown and red gown. According to the law, only senior officials could wear red and purple clothes, while low-ranking officials and ordinary citizens could only wear brown or other dark clothes. The Yuan dynasty attached great importance to the production of cotton, and people in southern China mainly used cotton cloth. Ordinary citizens began to wear clothes made of cotton. Men often wore very big gowns, and later cotton jackets and coats with short sleeves became popular. This was influenced by Mongolian clothes. The Yuan dynasty had many exchanges with Asian, African, and European countries, and some women tried Korean dresses. And with the coming of a large number of Persians and Arabs, their style also changed Chinese people's costume, which turned grand and flamboyant. This is the emperor of the Ming dynasty, Zhu Yuanzhang. Starting from the 7th century, only imperial family members could wear yellow gowns with a picture of dragons on it. Purple is for high-ranking officials. However, because the family name of the emperors in the Ming dynasty was Zhu, which means red in Chinese, red became the imperial color, and purple was no longer in use in imperial costume. The ranks of officers in the Ming dynasty was indicated by two patches on both the front and the rear of their gowns. Government officials have bird patterns on the patches, and the military officers have beast patterns. Ming emperors wear black kerchief with the rear a little higher than the front. Officials wore black gauze caps, but they had to wear kerchief with two wings when seeing the emperor. Their wives or mothers, if conferred by the emperor, also had different red dresses with big sleeves and robes to distinguish their ranks. What is interesting in that is that women at the time had similar taste with modern people. Women of upper classes began to wear high-heeled shoes. The heel might either be hidden or could be seen. The first Ming emperor even designed two kinds of caps himself for men and ordered the whole nation to wear them. One was square and tubby, while the other was hemispherical. The biggest characteristic of Ming dresses was the use of fasteners. They replaced the ties that had been used for several thousand years. There were also more types of skirts. Some looked like the phoenix tail, while some looked like rosy clouds. All were very grand and bright. They also had more accessories, but the rice field clothes were the most representative. The clothes were made by stitching many pieces of silk together. These pieces were in different size, color, and shape. They made the final products look like rice lands. In the 17th century, Manchu people came from the north and founded the Qing dynasty. Officials in Qing dynasty mainly wore a mandarin jacket over a long gown. It's designed to have a short baggy sleeve and above waist to enhance the mobility of horseback riding. The clothes were made of very simple materials, and the cuff looked like a horse hoof. Usually the sleeves were rolled up, but they were put down to protect the hand in case of war. Sometimes the emperor would reward yellow mandarin jackets to his favored subordinates, and it became very fashionable among the wealthy to wear mandarin jackets, particularly in formal occasions. The official hat in the Qing dynasty was totally different from previous dynasties. The hat had broad rim and a bunch of peacock's tail feathers. The feather for senior officials would have a dot. The emperor would also award feathers with 2 or 3 dots to imperial family members or officers who made huge contributions. The emperor's gown was also more glamorous than ever. The patterns of dragon and phoenix were formed by little pearls on phoenix feather. The workmanship and the selection of materials and color were unprecedented. Many fashion designs of the Ming dynasty continued to be used in the beginning of the Qing dynasty. Tight sleeve jackets and long skirts were still very popular, but by the end of the 18th century, the sleeves became shorter and wider, which was a characteristic of Manchu costume. Lace was widely used. The nobleness of the clothes depends on the lace. Manchu women wore qipao, also called chongsam, a kind of gown with high neck and slit skirt. They also have their own hairstyle and shoes, whose sole was in the shape of a flower pot. Compared with today's qipao, which is tight, the qipao then was loose. Most women from imperial families wore it. Sometimes noble Han women also wore it. Modern fashion designers are still trying to get inspiration from it, and with the development of China's modernization and the country's further opening up to the outside world, Chinese fashion has also become an important part of the international fashion industry.